Faith Dialogue, a public affairs program at the crossroads of religion and life, a series highlighting the cultural and social interaction between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTVC. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue. It was Alfred Lord Tennyson who wrote, "The old order changeth, yielding place to new. And in no place does that truth apply more than in school." Hello, I'm Richard Thompson, pastor of Central Presbyterian Church, and your host for today's edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. And today we turn our attention to the changing role of schools in our community. And as we reflect upon these changes, it will become increasingly clear that what's happening to education throughout our land and what's happening to schools everywhere is but a reflection of the changes taking place in the larger society. So it's fitting that Austin Metropolitan Ministries, as representative of the religious institutions of this area, should sponsor this dialogue with those from the educational community. There are three persons who will be joining us in this conversation today: Mickey Rosenberger, educational consultant; Mike Perez, assistant principal of Crockett High School; and Jennifer Hughley, a sophomore at LBJ High School and a member of the advisory committee for UIL, the extracurricular program for the state of Texas. And we welcome you all.
Thank you. Good morning.
And would like to begin, Mickey, as an educational consultant. You're no doubt traveling beyond the confines of Austin, across the state and other parts of the country. And as you address this issue of the changing role of schools, what are you saying to folks as you make these travels?
I'm helping the teachers particularly and the other administrators understand the changing role that they have to meet the needs of the clients that they're serving. Schools' clients, of course, are the students and the community as well as the parents. And these clients have different needs these days, and the old ways of working with the students has not been effective. And teachers are very frustrated not knowing how to enable these children to do their best. And so I'm helping the teachers to do a better job of instructing the children, motivating them to learn, and making education relevant to their lives.
Well, now, the old methods, you say, are not relevant. What are examples of that?
Well, our old system was based on textbook learning and reading, and today we're moving into technology. Students were used to having homework. They take homework home and finish it, bring it back. Often children don't have any place to go and do their homework. Homework is not effective. Perhaps they're going off and have a job, and so homework is not one of the aspects that's effective education for them. There's just a lot of changes that are happening, and education has to change in order to meet those needs.
Okay, well, I think we'll want to come back and identify some of those other needs. I think we can switch now, Mike. You're the assistant principal at Crockett. And day-to-day operation, how do you see the role of the schools changing as compared, for instance, to 10, 15, or 50 years ago?
Well, specifically in Austin. Now, if you take Austin, we have 10 high schools, and I can address high schools. That's where I am. As compared to a small town where they have one high school, I think the biggest change that I've noticed is that the feeling of community and togetherness on that campus, where everyone knows each other, where everybody cares for, knows the problems of everybody else. It might extend even to knowing the family, the mother, the father, or any one of those. The largeness of a school in Austin. You know, my campus averages between 1,700 and 1,800 students.
So schools are bigger now than they used to be?
Yes, definitely. Because of the city now. You've got to remember that we're in a large city. So that has a very direct impact on how the delivery system that Mickey's talking about can be done. We work as probably less humanistically because of the need for more paperwork, more bureaucracy, more accountability, all those things that are required to maintain the students through their system toward their goal of graduation. That requires a lot. The curriculum is structured more. That's because of legislation, obviously. But, you know, in the old days, when the teacher was free to give a lot of their own personal experiences and, you know, talk about the good things that they remember, what you remember in your mind about, remember that nice teacher who used to tell you the story about the mice who did this, that, and the other. Well, see, teachers are even under control now as far as they know in their minds, hey, I can't divert too much time over here. I need to stay to the essential elements. I need to work on this.
Okay, so the expectations of teaching are changing,
Yes,
and the
yes.
requirements of teaching
Yes.
are changing.
Definitely.
And this is making it different than it would be when
Yes.
some of us were growing
Right,
up.
exactly.
But you're growing up today, Jennifer, and you can't make the comparison with 15 or 20 years ago. But how do you see or do you feel change expected of the schools now that just on the basis of your experience? Can you tell that they're looking for more science? You're in a magnet school, and does that show a change in expectation?
Yes, of course. The technology is very rapidly broadening, and the schools need to change to give the students experience.
Help them keep up.
Right, right.
Mhm.
You can't keep teaching the same things you've been teaching in the past because we're going to the future. We're not still in the past.
Okay, so the fact that we're in a much more competitive world and we have to keep up not only within this country but with other nations, that comes to mind as you say that. And I think that you're talking about technology, but what about other needs besides just being trained technically in this more complex world? Do you feel the schools are helping you become a person in a different way or a better way? You have, for instance, I think, Mike, you were saying that schools can be less personal,
Yes, they can.
less attention.
Yes,
What about
yes.
your
The
experience?
schools are so big now that there's not, the ratio of teachers to students is not like it used to be. There used to be just a few students for every one teacher, and now you go into classrooms with 30 people in them, and you don't have as much individual attention.
Yeah, and it's hard not to get lost in the crowd sometimes, I bet.
And you don't really have the sense of community that he was talking about, even in the smaller schools. Sometimes
Sure.
we expect it in a school of, say, 1,800 students, but even the smaller schools are complaining because the teachers say the students move so often that they don't have a chance to really get to know them.
Mobility is a big factor. You know, mobility is among the students themselves. You know, my registrar tells me, you know, well, Mike, you know, we've had, you know, 8 students in the last 3 days come into Crockett, and we've lost 7.
That's right.
You know, that kind
My
of
word, that much turnover.
That
The
much
turnover.
turnover, and I'm sure it must apply to almost every campus in Austin. And it's maybe just between schools, from Bowie to Crockett, from Crockett to Johnston, you know, that kind of thing. But still, we've got kids coming in from out of state, from out of city, you know, all those. And that has an impact. The new attendance law, for example, has, one of the teachers told me, he said, you know, Mike, one of the factors that was not anticipated because of this new attendance law that requires kids to be in a class 80 days, but they can be absent whenever and make up the time, is that I cannot be sure from day to day that the same kids are going to be there day 2 for me to complete my lecture or my presentation that I did on day 1.
So the continuity is
The
broken.
continuity is
Right.
broken. So the criticisms that they give our schools regarding our failure to meet the needs of the students is in, I will agree with that with a qualifier, that we have to have, there's other factors involved. You know, we are successful because we try to educate everyone. In a democracy like we have,
Yes.
everyone is entitled to an educational structure or system. And they come into us at a high school level or an elementary grade level, for example, not speaking English. But the
Yes.
school immediately decides, hey, this young man or young lady must receive
Right,
an education. Therefore, we train him in English as quickly as we can because we value education.
Well, certainly one of the clearest examples of the changing role of schools is the fact that you've got languages now of so many. We are a Tower of Babel in this country in terms of so many different tongues, and we also have. I think you're mentioning the turnover. We are a nomadic society,
Right.
and do you see any connection between what Mike was just saying, for instance, Mickey, and the dropout rate?
Truly, it's very difficult for children to feel connected. One of the things we know through research about the at-risk child is that they don't feel connected. They feel alienated from society, from school. They don't have any connection anywhere. A child has been moved 3 times every school year is going to have a difficult time making friends, relating to the teacher. The teacher's going to have a hard time even doing diagnostic work and knowing what kind of needs they have. And that child eventually, if this is a pattern year after year, they eventually stop trying to make friends. And they become just the loner, the quiet, invisible student in the classroom, which makes it even more difficult for the child to get their emotional, social needs met as well as their academic needs met through the system.
All right, how are we going to turn that around? Just a quick answer, just right out of the blue.
I wish. We're doing a lot better at tracking students. Our dropout prevention is working very hard at tracking where our students going. You know, we used to, and some schools are still handing their child the files and saying, take it with you, so that they assume the child is re-enrolling somewhere. But a dropout technically means someone who's not enrolled in another school within a certain amount of time. But we are working very hard at tracking these students across the state, and eventually I'm sure that will go beyond the state borders so that we don't lose children. How we're going to affect the mobility of parents is beyond the school's control.
Right.
But as teachers are more aware of those needs that the children have, they will, what I call, hook into the child very quickly when they come in new, find a task for them to do, buddy them up with another child, a mentor, find some way for that child to be connected instantly in the school setting.
Are you a mentor to someone at LBJ, or do you know of mentors that are working with other students to help them come along and develop, or is that something that's a new experience with you?
That's new.
Do you find, though, that even if you don't have that kind of program and you're not involved in it, that you can find yourself in a different kind of a situation there? You're in a magnet school, you've got the advanced courses, and isn't it true that you grew up in Austin?
Yes.
You were telling me that you were born and you grew up. You're a person with roots, and it's a contrast to what we've been talking about here. And I think the one thing that I would hope is that the children who are moving around a lot and who are having a lot of problems and so on could eventually hope for the kind of education and experience that you're getting. And one of the ways maybe that could happen is through extracurriculars. What's this UIL stands for what?
University Interscholastic League.
And you're on the state advisory committee for this?
Yes.
And this has to do with all of the extracurriculars, athletics?
Any kind of competition, academic,
drama?
right, plays.
What have you advised them to do since you've been on that?
We haven't had our first meeting yet.
Oh, I see. You're just going on to it.
Right.
Do you have any ideas about how that could be improved?
No.
Not yet?
Not yet.
Maybe after you...
Yes, after discussion with the fellow board members, I'm sure that...
I just have a hunch sometimes that extracurriculars might be the thing that would
That's
motivate.
right.
Yes.
That's what I'd like to ask her. Is there a sense of community there at the magnet school? Do you do things together? Those of you who are in what kinds of things make it?
You've got your choice.
For example?
Band, football, soccer, science club, pre-med club. I'm in the band, and that's a very great sense of unity.
There's a community there.
Yes.
Always.
You can turn to anybody.
What else gives you a sense of community at your school?
I don't know if there's a difference in other schools, but for my school, I feel that the spirit, is great. You can pretty much rely on people.
You know, one of the interesting things
That's
about
great.
what she's saying is that I was in St. Louis a couple of weeks ago, and there was an article about senior rings.
Senior rings?
Regular
Oh,
high school
okay.
senior rings.
All right.
And it said, what is it about? There's an old song in the 50s, early 50s or early 60s that said there was a car wreck. This little girl is fatally hurt. And with her last breath, she reaches into the car and grabs something off there. And what it is the boy's senior ring. So what kind of loyalty is that to the boy or to the ring or whatever? And today, the way things are today, you can buy your senior ring anytime after your junior year, and you can wear it anytime, after your junior year. In the old days meaning when I was in school, okay, and probably prior to that, you waited till you were a senior. All the senior class got, there was one order. Everybody got together in the auditorium. It was a big deal. The newspaper was there. The teachers, the senior class sponsors, the principals, and your mom and dad and everybody. Wearing a senior ring was the badge of honor. You were a senior. You were the cock of the walk. You were it.
Okay,
You had made
so
it.
that's the way it was
And
back in those days.
Today, senior rings can be ordered from Zales, from Kruger's, from any company you want to, with any kind of paraphernalia you feel like putting on it, at anything. But as far as the traditional senior ring that gave you that identity
School pride.
is no longer that unique.
Now, Mike, I don't want you to tell your age, but was this before Leave It to Beaver?
About the same time.
About the same
About the same time, yes.
Okay, now how does that compare, I mean, that image on television about what life was like, family life was like, school was like? Jennifer, have you ever seen Leave It to Beaver?
Yes, yes.
How is it different from the reality of today?
That show is not reality. It's, in a sense, yes, too perfect, exactly.
Too perfect.
It's the picture that everybody wants to see and is wishing would be true, but it's not.
Okay.
Biologically intact families are a rarity. You know, 50% of our children are living in single-parent families.
50?
50%.
And where? In Texas or the nation?
Nationwide.
Nationwide.
Nationwide, and I would think Texas, that would be true.
Does Texas have some distinctiveness about its statistics in some way that we could focus on, or Austin, that give us a little local?
For example, the teen pregnancy rate being excessively high, or is that the kind
Is
of
that-
outstanding statistic? Yes.
I've heard something that
That's a
that
very
Austin
sad
is-
statistic, yes.
That Austin's got the highest in the nation.
We are one of the leaders, yes. We lead in all the wrong ways, yes.
Yeah. Why do you think that is true here?
I imagine it's a complex series of problems that have come together, but we obviously are not doing enough to help our young people make good decisions. They're not taking responsibility for their lives. They're doing a lot of what I call magical thinking. Teenagers get pregnant because they don't think they're going to get pregnant, and that they're not taking responsibility. William Raspberry said one of the things that they have found is that children, young women particularly, who have no goals for themselves are more likely to be pregnant. So it's like they don't see that it's going to make a difference, so they might as well parent, because that is one place where they can make a difference.
Okay,
And
but why here more than other places in that regard? What is there about our
I don't
environment
know.
that you work in the local school environment here, Mike? What would make Austin distinctive in that particular way?
Austin is a unique city. I mean, you travel to any other town in the state of Texas, and to me anyway, there's something about Austin that no other city can match. There's a freedom to it. There's a liberalism, if you want to call it that. There's more an acceptance of the other. You know, you do your thing, and that's fine. We're more likely.
But does that translate into these kinds of social problems
Yes,
as well?
definitely, definitely. We have, you know, through my job as an assistant principal, have dealing with solving problems.
You're
conflicts.
disciplinarian.
Yeah, right. The idea that a kid will do something wrong, it might be anything from walking out of a class to having a fight or something, he will decide, I will take my punishment without just, hey, okay, fine, you're gonna put me in ISS or suspend me or call my parents or whatever kind of punishment we're going to do. They will accept it with no, you know, remorse or whatever. You know, there's the old traditional thing that if I think it's great when you say, if you'll say I'm sorry and you show that you are humbled by the event, then you're more likely to receive easier punishment because you have shown repentance, you know, that kind of thing. And that's, you know, and the kids do that. If that's what you want to hear, they'll tell you. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Perez. I'm really sorry that I did that. I said, are you saying that because you want to make me feel good or because you want to feel good? I said, well, isn't that what you want to hear? And then you'll let me go.
Oh, I see. So it's a script.
So yeah, sure it is.
Yeah.
Because if you notice talking to kids, one of the things that impresses me about them is they have all the big words. You know, they all know the right things to say and the right, very sophisticated and all that kind of thing. But there is what's frightening to parents, I think, is that when you put them in the real world and they go out there, they really don't have that foundation, that real solid thing that, what happens when there's a crisis? You know, I had a counselor, by the way, call me, and in tears from a place in Austin, and I won't say who it was, but she was concerned because of that shooting that happened in Buda where the father killed the wife and the children.
Right.
I said, Mr. Perez, you know, that, to me, I just don't understand how an adult could find that as an answer to a problem. And this is an adult. Well, to me, I had no problem with that. Because the person, if part of the school's role is to teach you not factual content, but methods of problem solving. You see, therefore you should have 7 or 8, 9, 10 options, and then choose the options based on your best solutions.
But you know, my feeling is that the schools are being asked to do everything
Yes,
these days. I mean, it's not just reading, writing, and arithmetic anymore.
That's a minor
problem
point.
solving. It's values. It's the kind of thing that at one time we said belonged to the family or the church or some other institution.
Right.
The question is, are the schools being asked to do too much?
Definitely. The answer is definitely yes. Definitely.
All right.
but the family cannot do it. See, now you got to understand that a single-parent home where the mother is working heavy hours, in elementary they call them a latchkey kid who comes home and there's nobody there.
Right.
You know, he has to fend for himself. Well, that's not, in the past you had, you know, Mrs. Beaver lady, whatever her name was. She was there to take, you know, cookies and milk for the kid when they got home. Today, that's not necessarily true. It is very difficult for people like in our age to realize that these kids are literally making decisions that we didn't have to make until we were 20 years of
Yeah,
age.
growing up
And it's
so
hard
fast,
for a kid
right.
who's paying the bills and everything else, raise his hands and say, may I go to the bathroom? And he's been paying bills and, you know, he's been
Yeah,
running a household all
Feeding
by
the
himself.
family,
That's
doing
right.
that kind
Do
of thing.
you, I want to, Jennifer, they've been talking about some students here, and I have to keep getting a little reality check from you in terms of whether this fits your experience of kids having more responsibility than they may once have had.
Definitely, definitely.
Like having jobs after school, and what else?
Almost all my friends have jobs.
I see.
It's expected that when you turn 16, you have a job.
Uh-huh.
Most of the parents work if the parents are still together.
Uh-huh.
If they're not, then definitely.
Yeah. You know, one of the other things, help me out on, because I know that from one generation of students to the next, the terms change, but the groups, I mean, there's a caste society from time immemorial in schools, but I think it goes by different labels and maybe has a different character somewhat today. What are the groups in schools today?
There's so many of them. Jocks, kickers, preps, nerds, stoners, many more.
Skaters.
Skaters. There's
Oh, yeah.
almost too many to
Bunkers.
name.
Bunkers, lowriders.
Buckers and lowriders.
Druggies.
Skinheads.
Yeah.
The neo-Nazi groups.
Okay. I mean, it's not just freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. I mean, you're
No.
talking.
It's a
some
different
new
cultures
terms.
altogether, yes.
Okay, now these are subcultures, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
Maybe formed in a way to give a sense of community
That's right.
in the midst of a place that's
Instant
kind of
community.
anonymous. You can belong.
Instantly.
Okay.
Instant acceptance. A skater can
Right,
transfer
right.
from Bastrop to Buda and to Austin, and they will have an instant community that they can attach
Right.
to.
Okay.
The group is already set up.
It's already set
Just
up.
walk
Which
in
causes
and-
a problem for a dropout, for example. You know, for some kid who is trying to change his ways, you know, and moves into a new school, and he's still dressed in the trappings of a skater, for example. And he
Yeah.
walks in, and then he sees my skaters. Well, there's an instant identity, you see,
And
with them.
extra
So now
nuance
he
and
wants to be a brainiac or something or other, and you have to go over there and, do I have to dress like they do? Do I,
Yeah.
do I have to walk like, do I have to stand in that, you know, those are pressures that high school kids, and I assume all kids, have to deal with, because in their effort to be individuals, you know, they actually wear the trappings of the group. You see? So,
Okay, that's the new kind of dress code then.
yes, it's like their own dress code,
Right.
yes.
That's how you identify most of the groups, by the way they dress.
That's
I
right.
see.
The
That's a
boots,
costume, in a way.
the heavy metal T-shirts.
What about the religious kids? Do they dress up differently? I mean, is that a different group?
No, they're in all the groups.
Okay.
There's a few.
Let's
there's
focus on that for a minute. This is a program sponsored by Austin Faith Dialogue, or is sponsored by Metropolitan Ministries, our program Faith Dialogue. And the question I wonder is, we know that in this pluralistic land where we've got so many different religions and no religions, we can't expect the schools to play a religious function. The Supreme Court has said that, and I think we can understand that. But what inside the school, you're part of a church community.
Yes.
And what difference does belonging to a religious community make for a young person that's in school?
It's a very big difference. As far as I'm concerned, you've always got somebody to turn to. If you can't, say you don't fit in any group,
Okay.
take the case where somebody moves in and he's new, he may not fit into the group, he fit in back home. You can always turn to your church, your pastor, your friends there. It's another community within itself, and then its seeds are in all the other little cliques in school.
So you can kind of maybe even cross groups in terms of being,
Right.
having that root in a religious community. What about, I just came across an article in the American Education Journal about Satanism in school. Do you see that as another way of trying to find community in a rather strange way?
Just like any organization, whether it be a church or a satanic cult or a band, you know, it's just a sense of belonging, acceptance. It's a little group just like all the rest.
Okay. Well, one of the things that's coming to me, and I hadn't really realized our conversation was going to go in this direction, but I think if there's any one thought that keeps coming back is the necessity of community.
Definitely.
And if we don't have that as human beings, we perish.
That's right.
And we're living in a society that's disintegrating communities. It's like pouring
That's right.
acid on what has been ways of connecting people, and now we're having to make new arrangements.
That's right.
And what are some of these new arrangements that can give people that? And you've begun to mention some.
Let me, one of the things that impresses me about kids, and it almost brings tears to your eyes to watch them. We have the food drives for Christmas and for Thanksgiving, and those happen throughout the year. And since I'm only at Crockett, I know that it's happening on all the other campuses, but I can relate to that, is watching the hundreds of boxes of food that the kids bring because they want to help. They are so giving. Now, you hear all the bad negatives on them. You hear all the bad vibes about every campus and what's going on. But by God, when there's a crisis, you had the junior class, a senior class from Johnston High School where that little girl got burned and died.
Yes,
and they gave half of their senior class.
And showing the heart that's there.
Yes, and there's a lot there.
And I want to say to you, from my heart, I thank you for being here today and for sharing with us this understanding of the changing community. We've been pleased to have Mickey Rosenberger and Mike Perez and Jennifer Hewlett to be with us. Join us next week. I'm Richard Thompson, in behalf of Austin Metropolitan Ministries, inviting you to be with us again on Austin Faith Dialogue. Peace be with you. For more information, call Austin Metropolitan Ministries